right. I'm Lisa Cholodenko, and I'm gonna introduce Debra Granik and Thomasin, McKenzie, and my favorite treasure, Dickey, and who else do we have?
Anne Roslini.
And Anne Roslini, who's the producer. Our DP, her DP. Mike and all right, let's sit. Let's chat.
Michael said that he'll field questions from his seat. So people can ask about the photography because he's here.
Right.
Well, what a crazy, beautiful, unexpected film. I loved it. It's just an exquisite film. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
You've done it again.
All of us? Oh, you want us to speak a little louder?
Please.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
We can even move our chairs closer. If we need.
Let's do it.
Yeah, even better.
All right.
Oh, all right.
Well, you and I met each other a long time ago when you were at Sundance with Down to the Bone, and Vera Farmiga was a discovery, and I was on the jury that year, and I remember us talking about awards and stuff, and just everybody being like kind of awed and blown away by this actress that nobody had seen before, and in such an amazingly directed, role, and she was just so charismatic and wonderful. So I know you probably hear it all the time, but you have this knack for finding these incredible young ingenue actresses. So I want to know how you guys met and what that process was, because you were really unexpected and very compelling.
So she found me.
Okay, so she knew.
Yeah, so she sent something from the Southern Hemisphere, a video document, self-taped audition.
Oh.
And so, yeah, so.
For this role.
role,
So you guys
yes.
were casting, and she put herself on tape.
Yes,
Yeah.
Tom did
Yeah,
that.
I'm from New Zealand, so I couldn't fly over to America to do the audition and see Debra in person. So I did a self-tape, which is how us New Zealand and international actors do it if we want to make it in America. And yeah, I seen a self-tape just of the audition scenes, and I also sent a video of me running through the New Zealand bush so I could give Debra an idea of what the environment that I lived in was like, and yeah, it was kind of a weird self-portrait.
Yes. So, in that sense, when someone just delivers that to your inbox, there's really,
And especially when you and Anne wrote the script, right?
yes, adaptation from a novel.
From a novel, right?
Yes.
So you'd probably been sitting, I imagine, for a long time, kind of imagining this character. And was it, with your work, is it an easy kind of moment, or does it take you a while to kind of identify who you want to represent this imagined person that you spent a lot of time with in writing a script?
I don't think we have a physical image in our minds as much as we know that we want someone that will do process with us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that Tom was affirming in each conversation, in the subsequent conversations after seeing the audition when we Skyped, the willingness to want to jump in, to take any kind of training that might help the role, in this case wilderness training and outdoor survival training, discussing why she feels this value, that this enjoyment from the natural world, and being willing to imagine as a contemporary teen human being life without social media.
Yeah.
So, but that takes that you have to want to go there.
Yeah.
You have to want to be. She
a fully immersive kind of just
Not everyone's willing to say, you know what? I'll put my phone down during much of the shooting.
But I also have to say, Debra made that really easy, because I'd never worked with a director who was so willing to be really collaborative and open to new ideas and to slight changes or to. Oh, sorry. I was just saying that Debra, it was easy to be willing to do the preparing and the research because Debra was open to collaborating much more so than any other director I'd worked with before, and she was open to new ideas and to outside opinions and to learning things from people that she wanted to portray in this film.
So the willingness to work in that way
Yeah.
interests me greatly, and so that's another. So more than imagining who, it's the qualities that they would like to bring to the project as well.
Yeah, well, I think your work is so specific and it's magnificent in the way that it goes into reality. I mean, it's realism at this very heightened level. It's full bodied. So I imagine you would want that from an actor.
I'm feeling really good tonight.
And no, it's very distinguished and impressive to me. And this was like yet another space. Your first two films have very specific, locations and populations and concerns. And so I was delighted and surprised when I saw this and wanted to know, like, what attracted you as a filmmaker. I mean, obviously there's a laundry list as filmmakers, especially writer-directors, including character and setting and, just the kind of central concern of the film. But I wondered, it was clearly something different than you'd done, yet had, it was a companion piece to things you've done in many ways. So can you speak to that? Am I being specific enough?
Yes, no. I think you're saying, like, we all have to read, we read a lot of scripts, we think of a lot of ideas, and what makes us pick one over the other? Like, how do we get to commit to a film? And for this, the Pacific Northwest was a huge draw. The idea that to film something in a majestic setting, it's hard to film in natural settings, right? Because National Geo will haunt us. There's a way in which there has to be a must. There can't be an utter, pristine, immaculate beauty to filming nature.
Right.
And so that was going to present like kind of an unexpected, maybe it's an unexpected challenge, but the idea that, and even 50 Shades of Green, that was, there was a time when digital cameras even couldn't process green very well.
Yeah.
But the idea that we'd be working in a very specific palette that we had very little control over, it was going to, this forest was going to establish the palette, and there was very much we could do about that, So that was also exciting to have some parameters there, and then the opening of the story was a strange contemporary existential mystery. Why is this particular family living this way? Why are they living undetected in a public park? What do they need? Why aren't they living in a normative way? How do you pull that off? What does it take? Can it last? What will happen when they're discovered? So those were those questions that I said, strangely minor note questions at first blush.
Huge.
Huge questions, yeah. Exactly.
Well, also as a director, you're asking those questions, but then how do I translate that and pull it off so that it's credible? So that somebody can ask that question with some kind of integrity. I mean, that's the job of a filmmaker, and you did that successfully, really successfully. That's hard to set that up and say, "Oh, I'm gonna buy into that. I'm gonna believe that." That's not easy.
But that does cause a lot of drafts.
Yeah, sure does.
Because those questions will bite you very intensely.
Yeah.
And something doesn't add up about his personality, about his parenting, the choices he's making.
Slow reveal.
Right.
Like,
and when does Tom's character start making her increments of distance making from or her perception shifting, so that the ending itself, auditioning all kinds of endings.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah, I was
Yes.
going to ask.
Yes.
I mean, for me, when I watched it, one thing that I really just was kind of awed by was how, surprising and inevitable the ending was. I know that's a trope, but it's rare that you see a film that really delivers on that. You're surprised, but it's like, how else could it be? And it's just the simultaneous feeling, and that's really hard to get too, as I think, as a film director and in a script. So I wondered, you guys wrote it, how much did you take from the book? Where did you kind of go rogue? What was your process with that?
So, I mean, one of the first things we do is we do when you say like almost like page for page literal adaptation, the first pass, just to see which scenes from the novel are filmable. They don't have too much internal context to them. There's rich context in this book where Tom's character does say things, and you get inner knowledge, you get context, backstory. None of that can be in the screenplay.
Right.
So the first thing that then becomes beguiling is, okay, will it be okay to start the screenplay like you would meet strangers, without including a lot of backstory, a lot of exposition? And then the next thing that I think Anne and I value in the process is going to the location, having the real Oregon, the real Portland, the real environs start to inflect.
Sure.
So,
you're shaping it, and it's shaping you.
The book says they were placed on a farm that a benevolent rancher, or in this case, tree farmer and horse rancher, permitted them to have this like internship and placement on his property. So we go out to these farming areas, and then of course we see that in addition to horses, there's also a huge Christmas tree industry, and we also notice that kids seem to find pleasant diversion by doing great care with barnyard animals called 4-H. And so then we find out that there's so many different 4-H clubs you could pick from the chickens or baby goats. You pick rabbits because they're easy to wrangle. But the fact is, what I'm saying is that things start to go. So we drive around in this little rental car, and the back seat is sort of like, we throw some things back there that are starting to tell us about the flavor.
Which was not in the book.
Right.
It just kind of gave you.
You can't get that from the book because you have to go to ground zero and then see who's really there. She in the book, she's asked to go to church. She and her father are asked to attend because the rancher thinks it would be really pleasing and really a great way to get to know people in the community, and that there would be activities, and it's what would be in that church. It wasn't specified. It didn't say which Christian rock band was performing. It didn't say which devotional dancers. So we had to go find that in the actual scouting and reconnaissance.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So and you can feel it in all the work that you do. It's just you're totally immersed in it. You're just in it, and that's one of the great pleasures of watching your work, and also because your subjects are really challenging. On the on the description, you would think, oh man, I want to watch that, and then you enter your films and you're like, I'm in it and I'm with it, and I'm really glad to be here. That too is an incredibly hard thing to pull off. So I want to know more about why the attraction to these family dynamics, people that are on the margins, people that are struggling with mental health or drugs or whatever.
I think that social realists, of which I'm in that what's it, subculture or genre. I don't know if you pick it or whether you're sort of born. It's one of those things where you're sort of born that way, right?
Yeah.
So
I just didn't know if there was something specific where you grew up, this was kind of just what you were immersed in.
I think over time I've become very interested in methods of survival, of course, and wanting to know what that anthropology, what does that look like? What are the details for that survival? What do people need to have in place to enact that survival? And so I think that's what brings me to some of these stories. And I think the big challenge that I'm facing, is really how to make sure that people don't just equate that with dreary. That social realism has to be dreary. That there can be space for the lyrical, for humor.
And the human, the poetic part of something that can be really dark. So since I didn't know Dale was going to be here, who I just worked with.
I'm here to observe and watch. See this little one and might love him.
I'm just going to diverge a little bit. How did you and Dale connect? Because now you've got a history together.
Yeah.
Was the first time on Winter's Bone?
Yes.
It was. The first time was Winter's Bone, and I remember my agent called and said, you have an audition, and I just, I read the novel, and it clicked in the room, and Debra had me do some improvisation, and because I'd read the novel, I felt close to the subject matter. I knew I could fit into that world, I just didn't know that it would necessarily be Mirab. And so I just feel extraordinarily blessed and lucky that I've gotten to have the opportunity to work with Debra and Anne and Michael. Again, it's a very special family, and this young one who's just so extraordinary. That was a real treat to get to. So yeah, Debra called and
Because the script had your name in it already.
The
So
script-
you asked me that. You asked me that. Actually, we did. Anne and I totally, when we were thinking about who the mayor of this bohemian enclave,
You're like, well, of course.
Yeah. So that's an example. Actually, I just went. I need to contradict myself.
Yeah.
That absolutely we were envisioning someone extremely specific for that, and that was, I think that's the, maybe just as a Northeastern person, I overexploit the attraction I have to your Southern roots, but the fact is that the Tennessee in you.
Oh, I could have lived in that little village. I could have lived in those it was very similar to some places in East Tennessee where I grew up. But I know during the film, I think people keep waiting when you meet me that I'm going to have a chainsaw or something. So it was nice to play someone benevolent, and it was just a beautiful experience. Really grateful.
Yeah, exactly. Rock the flannel, but yeah, that you could be like you Dale could be Dale, and even in both films, maybe even have even slightly similar clothing on, and that it'd be such extremely opposite ways of handling life.
Exactly,
and
dealing with people.
and proceeding, and dealing with people.
How do you deal with going, you're in these kind of challenging environments and, with a lot of probably non-actors, and there's a lot of sort of delicate timing and all that. Do you spend time rehearsing with actors, or do you, what's that process? Or do you kind of just, we're going out there and we're going in and we're going to find it?
I like rehearsal.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to budget for, and Anne puts a lot of priority on that, making sure that we, at least, I think you and I remember just even the night before being able to at least speak and talk it out
about what we were doing the next day.
And then Tom, super generously, you were willing to meet with me on the weekends. You'd show me a lot of your notes and your script, and
so that was kind of like before you're going in. Sometimes people say, well, we're going to spend 4 days and we're just going to go through all the scenes, and we're going to sort of rehearse, not put it up on its feet, but just do it together and talk out, see if the script has any bumps for people. But it sounds like you're going sort of day by day, looking at the day ahead.
And we had mostly that, but then we had little pockets. So Tom had.
Well, we had 2 weeks of rehearsal. It was just like 2 weeks of solid rehearsal. It wasn't any filming or anything, and it wasn't like the rehearsal that you would think of. We weren't all sitting together in a room running through the scenes or anything like that, talking about how the character was feeling in that moment or their motives or whatever. We were doing wilderness training and going to the beekeeper's house and having sessions with her and learning how to handle the bees and to be calm around them, and working with Nicole and Ellen, the wilderness trainers, and the only time during the rehearsal period that we spent on the script was going through the script and kind of taking out some of the dialogue, which you and Ben did really closely together, and spent a lot of time talking through that, and when we started doing that too. So we didn't really rehearse the scenes, we were rehearsing their life, kind of.
Yeah, and then maybe one thing that would be more like that Lisa's describing is when you worked with the two teen women in the facility, Alyssa those scenes. We
Yeah.
kind of, that was a kind of a
Oh
night
yeah.
before.
We did some arts and craft things, and we did run through some of the scenes with them.
I'm going to open it up in a minute, but I have one question, which I thought it was fascinating that you were able to traverse not dealing with the mom question, and when did this, what's the history of these two people alone together,
Right.
and one could say, what, is she kidnapped? It was very mysterious at the beginning, and of course my mind goes to like, what's the worst possible scenario? So the unfolding of this thing, and then not really, how did you guys decide to let that just be super off screen? We don't need to deal with that.
Super hard decision. Backstory is always, I think it is the hardest part of adaptation of novel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more if we put little bit in, it begged for more.
Mm-hmm.
So then in the end we had to peel back. We had a place where when she looked in that private pouch of her father's papers, there, one of the big things that was in there was like four important photographs that were Tom and her mother, and we filmed them. I think it was unsatisfying to drop a little bit more and then say nothing. So it ended up being, to go the most austere choice ended up being the more decisive choice, because you had to start to build from the here and now.
I
You had to meet
loved
them
it.
and then decipher.
Yeah.
But it was tricky. It was tricky to figure out what could people tolerate, what could people feel thwarted by, and what could they accept the way that you would have to meet a stranger, that you can't know everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was brave, it was strong, and you pulled it off.
I'm grateful that audience will go with it.
Yeah.
I don't mean in a glib way. I mean like it is.
No, it's the other ways to not have confidence in an audience, but it also requires you to do the architecture so that they can accept it, and you clearly did that. Okay, I'll open it up. Yes.
I absolutely loved it. It was just so incredible and moving. As a parent, it just ripped my heart. I'm wondering, from the fine actress Tom, apart from your wilderness training where you learned incredible skills with a knife, I'm wondering, because you were so incredibly expressive with your co-actors and even with the camera, your eyes, everything about you is just so expressive. How did you prepare on your journey as an actress before this role to be so exceptional? And in your future, are there actors that you hold as heroes that you would like to follow in their path?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's really nice to hear, and really encouraging. I grew up in an acting family. My mum started off as an actress, and she's an acting coach now. And she's done directing as well. My dad, who was here, but he's disappeared. But he started off as an actor, and now he's a director and a writer. And all of my siblings have done acting. My big sister went to drama school, Toi Whakaari, the drama school in Wellington, New Zealand. My little sister, she's done acting. My big brother, he's done acting. He's more into politics now, though, which is another kind of acting, I guess. But yeah, so I've just kind of grown up with it, and I've learned a lot through watching my family and through osmosis. My grandma as well, she was an actress, and my granddad was an expert on Hollywood knowledge, I guess. So yeah, just learning through watching and through being around it. To be honest, I didn't want to be an actress when I was younger. I really was dead set against it because I was sick of it. I thought it was lying, but now I know that it's not lying. It's the exact opposite. It's telling the truth and trying to be relatable, and to help people to be empathetic to other experiences and to other lives. In terms of people I look up to, I really love a lot of the work Michelle Williams has done. As whenever someone asks me this, I've got so many people I look up to, but in the moment my mind just goes blank. So when I get home, I'll go, oh, I wish I'd said this person. And,
Well, they'll be saying all that about you. They'll be saying to you.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyone else?
You've got one of your inspirations sitting next to you.
Yeah, Dave,
Who?
Dickey. Thanks, Dad. There he is. Reappeared.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for your amazing work. It was thrilling, and thank you for this Off of Hollywood movie. But I have like a lot of questions because I was confused until the very end, and I have a question to Debra. Because it's obviously your decision not to reveal the story that led this family to this condition, and until the very end, I've got no clue what happened to this man and why he's hiding, and he barely talk about that. He barely explain what exactly is wrong with this world in his opinion, because all the people around him are so nice to him, obviously, even though he was like taking, but there was no like big drama, and we don't see this contrast between like peaceful words and cruel real world that he's avoiding. So my question is, what was this decision based of? Because as an audience, I didn't feel any compassion to this man that he's just torturing his daughter, and I was just simply happy when he's left. Like, okay, oh fuck. Thanks God. Yeah, I'm unfortunately I'm not familiar with the novel, and I guess I'm not alone. That's not familiar with the novel, but can you tell about it?
What's the question? We didn't hear the question.
The question is, what was this decision made based on the not to reveal the story that led to this?
The fact that the father has struggling with PTSD.
Yeah.
So that you didn't, that wasn't revealed for you or whatever at the end, till the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I think, and it's extremely, in some ways the story is very ambivalent about like the father, whether this is acceptable parenting or guardianship. It is, many people are very pleased that this girl can get to this place of figuring out how going forward they may not be able to walk the same path, and that she says that at some point she is, in some ways developing her thoughts enough that she can finally try to say something to him that shows that she understands that they're wired differently, they need some different things. But in terms of showing in a very explicit way, the world wasn't what people weren't. You're right. People were not cruel. It's not like there was some definitive thing that he could be alienated from. He had a kind of internal PTS is a very internal condition, and it's not like you can see it on the person. And but I think you have to look on a broad stroke about what are some of the things that you can imagine that he was alienated from. It appeared that he didn't really want to be a part of the digital society, right? He didn't want to really be just brought into that, towed into that, and contained by that. It appeared that he didn't feel like that he needed a lot of material objects in a really intense consumer society. He was someone who didn't feel like he wanted a lot of material possessions. So it's very hard to live against the grain. And so he's really a fable character in that way. He's living against the grain. It's a very hard decision to make. And he's not really entitled to do it. He doesn't own property, so there's no one saying it's okay to live this way. So it is happening on a very subtle level. And there was no entity. Even the social workers were not, it's not like they they said no. You know, they had an ax. I mean, they said in the interest, the state has a responsibility, and the state deems that the way you're living is not okay. You cannot raise a child in the particular life that you're leading. But it, you know, there was not that kind of conflict in this screenplay or in this film that said, you know, here's the definitive reason of what he's running from. So you're quite right. It
so
was.
You're saying that it doesn't really matter what happened to him because we are focusing on a Tom's character more.
I mean, in my mind, it does matter, but it's very open for interpretation. You know, some people.
What was your particular idea if you had one?
Well, I definitely had one because, you know, to believe in a character like that and to write with that character in mind, and also I'd read the book, and and I had done a project right before this film in which I had a very long conversation with a veteran and had learned quite a bit about PTS from his perspective, and yeah, so I very much thought it was a person who had participated in combat that came home with a lot of reordering of his mind. It made it very hard for him to live in a normative way in mainstream society, and he chose a way of life that he could handle, which was to be very secluded and to kind of contain and organize the actual day-to-day of his life so that he could manage it, so that he could do the things he could do, which was be her teacher and whatnot. So that, you know, I definitely had those ideas in mind.
Thank you.
We're going to join us.
Oh, I think there's
reception area.
reception
You're
up there.
welcome to join us to conclude and continue the conversation.
All right.